Hello and welcome to My Bonus Life, episode 170. And here is today's agenda. So as usual, I'll talk about my shirt to begin with. This is my Serpentine Garage working shirt. It's from a garage I used to own back in the day. No real story about it, it's just I like to wear it when I'm relaxing or working on cars. Please don't be concerned about these marks on my neck. I got one of those cauterizing pens to zap off a few sort of skin tags and things I've got around the place, and that's what they look like when they're healing, so don't panic about that. Now, the main thing I want to talk about today is ANZAC Day, because I know a lot of you are not Australian, and I want to help you understand what it is to be an Australian, the days that are important to us. So I'll pop up on the screen just to begin with a quick definition. We're going to go into it in more detail as time goes on, but here's the definition of ANZAC Day. So just reading out. ANZAC Day is a national day of remembrance in Australia, New Zealand and Tonga that broadly commemorates all Australians and New Zealanders who served and died in all wars, conflicts and peacekeeping operations, and the contribution and suffering of all of those who have served. Observed on the 25th of April each year, ANZAC Day was originally devised to honour the members of the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, which is ANZAC or ANZAC, who served in the Gallipoli campaign, their first engagement of First World War, which was 1914 to 1918. So that's what ANZAC Day is. It's within the context of two other public holidays that we have in Australia, which is Australia Day and Remembrance Day. What it has in common with Australia Day is we are celebrating the fact that we are Australian, or also New Zealanders and Tongans, as it turns out, because the Tongans also sent 90 soldiers off to World War I. So what it has in common with Australia Day is a sense of national pride. What it has in common with Remembrance Day is that Remembrance Day is another military day. So the Remembrance Day is the 11th of November, which commemorates the 11th of November 1918, which was the end of World War I. So there you go, that's what it has in common with those 2 days. Now, why do we celebrate ANZAC Day on April 25? So I'll just take you to this reading here. ANZAC stands for the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. The soldiers in the forces became known as the ANZACs. ANZAC Day is a commemoration of the anniversary of the landing of Australian and New Zealand troops at Gallipoli, Turkey, on 25th of April in 1915, when Great Britain declared war against Germany for its invasion of Belgium in 1914. Australia and New Zealand, as dominions within the British Empire, regarded themselves automatically also at war. So there's a couple of things there. So firstly, it is a commemoration of effectively the first day of military operations for Australians and New Zealanders in World War I. So it wasn't at the beginning of the war. The war had been going on for a while then, but it took a while for the Australian soldiers to get shipped from Australia and New Zealand, and some from Tonga, off to Egypt. They're trained in Egypt, and then they're sent to the Gallipoli campaign, which was in what was then called the Ottoman Empire, later Turkey, now called Turkey. So that's what it is. So what we're celebrating is actually what turns out to be a failed military campaign. So it's quite odd in that we're celebrating a military failure. But what the success of it was is that it was the first time where Australians and New Zealanders felt like they had their own identity separate to the British. So up until that time, we were just a British colony, and we were just, the younger brothers of Britain. From this moment onwards, we were like, no, we have our own identity. We have done our own things. We are Australia, and we are New Zealand, and we stand on our own 2 feet. So that's the gist of it. It also feeds into partly why Australians and New Zealanders are really, really good friends. We have fought together, we have died together, we have very similar politics, not the same, New Zealand politics, for example, they're completely anti-nuclear. They will never have anything to do with nuclear power or nuclear arms or nuclear-powered military vessels. Australia, on the other hand, has recently ordered some nuclear-powered submarines. So there's slight differences in our politics, but very much we're really well aligned. I think of us like two sort of brothers in that we love to give each other hell, like we'll niggle each other. But if anyone that's not Australian or New Zealander hassles out a New Zealander, I'll be onto them because you don't insult my friend. You know what I mean? So we have each other's back and we love to have niggle between ourselves, but it's all a bit of fun. But yeah, if you take one of us on, you take both of us on. That's how Australian and New Zealanders are. Now, I want to look at what the British Empire looked like in 1914. So here's a map. So as you can see, a fair chunk of the world was actually part of the British Empire at that point. So when Britain declared war on Germany, all of these other countries were immediately implicated as needing to support their father country and go to war with them. So as you can see there's Australia, New Zealand, but you could also see what is nowadays southern Papua New Guinea, but in the olden days, the northern part was called Papua, the lower part was called New Guinea. So that bit in red there is just the New Guinea part. But you can also see India, Pakistan, South Africa, Zimbabwe. There's quite a lot of other countries that were involved. A lot of the Pacific Islands were and still are. Well, they were part of the British Empire then. They're now part of the Commonwealth. So yeah, countries like Tonga, for example, were implicated as well. So that's what it looked like. If you want a list of countries, because it's quite astounding. You know, we think that England went to war with Germany. Well, just have a look at this list. And these are all of the colonies that fought for the Allies in World War I. So all of those countries there on that list were actually at war with Germany. So yeah, if you take on one, you take on them all. And when you look at who all of us are, there's a lot of us. So that was what Germany was actually taking on. Now, in terms of the Gallipoli campaign, there obviously were casualties. And I want to just go into those because I find something quite unusual about that. And just to explain this, when the Australians and New Zealanders landed in what later became known as ANZAC Cove, it turns out A, they didn't land where they were supposed to land, and B, their intelligence on what the landscape looked like was completely faulty. And actually, there were not quite sheer cliffs, but very, very steep cliffs. I might get one off the internet and pop it up for you. So there you go, that picture there. That's how steep the cliffs were at Gallipoli. Now, you would think, given that the defenders would have an enormous numerical advantage over the attackers. But the casualties, the official casualties anyway, don't bear that out. So if we look here, the Allied casualties from the Gallipoli campaign were around 141,500 casualties, with 44,150 that were killed. Okay, so keep that figure in mind. And then when we look at the Ottoman had total estimated casualties of 250,000 with 87,000 killed. So they lost almost twice as many as the Allies did, even with the defenders' advantage, which blows my mind, because generally speaking in warfare, they consider it a 2-to-1 advantage. So if you are an attacker, you'll need 2 attackers to neutralize 1 defender. So you'll tend to have twice as many casualties as the defending team if you're attacking. And the Anzacs were attacking uphill, severely uphill, and their back was to the ocean. There was no full retreat. The ocean was what was behind them. So I find those figures quite amazing. I do have some relatives that fought in Gallipoli. So my great-grandfather is Charles Eddington. Charles was one of 5 boys. All 5 ended up signing up for World War I. 3 of them went to Gallipoli, and unfortunately one of them was injured. He copped a bullet through the elbow, but he made it back to Perth safely. The other two were there and survived. And I'll put a link down in the description to that part of my family tree, and you can read about it for yourself. So that there is Walter Eddington. Now, what really amazes me with that photo is if you ever told me that that was a photo of my dad, I would believe you, because those eyes and that nose and the curly hair, that's my dad. That's looks so much like my father, but it's actually my grandfather's brother. So that's my great uncle. And Walter was the one that was injured. He copped a bullet through the elbow. So yeah, that's what happened to him in the Gallipoli campaign. Going back to the agenda. Okay, I want to read out to you ATATURK's speech. So ATATURK was at the time the general in charge of the part of the Turkish army that controlled the Gallipoli Peninsula when the ANZACs invaded. He later goes on, I think it was around 1926, he actually ended up becoming the president or the prime minister, I think it might have been president, of Turkey. And this is a speech that he made well after the end of the war, but talking about the ANZACs. So just reading out this speech here. Those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives. You are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. Therefore, rest in peace. There is no difference between the Johnnies and the Mehmets to us, where they lie side by side here in this country of ours. You, the mothers who sent their sons from faraway countries, wipe away your tears. Your sons are now lying in the bosom and are in our bosom and are at peace. After having lost their lives in this land, they have become our sons as well. So there's this really interesting dynamic between the Australians and New Zealanders and the Turks. And what that dynamic is partly to do with is that neither of us wanted to be there. Australia and New Zealand was there because we were part of the British Empire. Turkey was there because they had a pact with the Austro-Hungarians. So actually, we didn't have beef. We weren't upset with each other. We were there because of proxy arrangements we had with other people. So there was a bit of a feeling of, yeah, we'll fight, but I don't really hate you. I can actually just respect your bravery and respect that you are honouring those relationships that you have with other countries by being here. So it was a war of honour in that case. And it's lovely that the Turkish people realise that. The Turkish leadership have made this beautiful speech. And apparently, I've not been to the Gallipoli Peninsula, but apparently when you go there and you say you're Australian, you're really welcomed very, very warmly. So even though we were the enemy and we killed Turkish people, we are viewed as friends, which I think is lovely. Now, after the war, the idea of what was and wasn't, or what was a British colony changed. So in 1926, a declaration came out called the Balfour Declaration, and I'll just read this out to you. The Commonwealth was officially formed in 1926 when the Balfour Declaration of the Imperial Conference recognised the full sovereignty of dominions. Known as the British Commonwealth, the original and therefore earliest members were Australia, Canada, the Irish Free State, Newfoundland, New Zealand, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. Now, later on, a whole heap of other countries joined, but that's the start of what we today call the Commonwealth. And if I give you a list of the countries today, there are now 22 Commonwealth countries. Here's a map of it. And you can see that, there's still a lot of us, and mostly it is the old British Empire, but it's not exactly the old British Empire. And you can see that New Guinea is now Papua New Guinea. So it's the southeastern and the northeastern part of that island. So there you go. And all of those Pacific islands that you can see there as blue dots. So that's that. So going back to the agenda. Okay, the back scratches. Let's do the individual statuses. So I'll pop them up on the screen for you. So as you can see, it's pretty much the main work to be done is with this final 7, But the really important news is that David, my brother, had his back scratcher turn up. Here is a picture of my brother David with the back scratcher that Noel and I made for him. So another happy customer there. That's great. Now, there is a package that I've sent to the US that hasn't been delivered yet. I can still see it's in transit. It has arrived in America, but it hasn't arrived at its destination. And I'm just a little bit concerned with the US Postal Service, whether it's just slow or whether maybe they've rejected it because it's made of wood. I don't know. I would have thought things that are made of wood come into your country all the time. And if you were to inspect it, it's very clear that it's healthy wood. So time will tell. So I'll just have to see, but I'm going to just hold off on posting any more to the US until the first couple arrive. Here is a photo of the final 7. So as you can see, Noel and I decided to make them as a batch. Even having said that, no 2 of them are completely identical. That's the way it goes when you hand make things, but they are on their way. Lastly is to say, please subscribe and like my channel, or like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a pleasure to bring you these videos. I hope my message is going far and wide. And yeah, to the Australians and New Zealanders and Tongans that are watching this, I hope you had a great ANZAC Day. I certainly did. And may we never have to go to war together again. But if we do have to go to war again, let's do it together. So thanks from Paul in Perth. I'll talk to you again soon. See you later. Bye.